All right, so we're talking about the history of crypto realities field research in this video, and I'm going to go over like as many of these crazy. I mean, we've got 450 research films where we had incidents because we were alongside these creatures for the last 7 years, and so when we're talking about encounters and having been in the shit with these creatures, uh, I think my wife and I qualify as like PTSD survivors at this point. So the way I look at it is, I have a lot to say, and so I'm going to lay these things out like from the beginning, and the first thing we're going to go over is really what ultimately is, in my opinion, the scariest place you'll ever go at night in the state of Florida. Next on the Bigfoot Researchers Journal. All right, so scariest place that I've ever been. Okay, um, we've had several people with us in this place. In the daytime, it's Carrie describes it as claustrophobic. Carrie Arnold from Bigfoot Odyssey, right? We took him in 2016 or 2017, 2016, I think it was, for a night expedition in Research Area 4. And this place, I mean, man, in the daytime, you only have a few feet on each side of you, and there's walls of bush and water on one side and bush going down to water on the other side. You're on a levee, that's all you got. And they're in those bushes on the sides of the levee, period. And we've we've had experience after experience. But when we took Carrie in at night, now Melanie, here's the thing, back up a little bit. We'd been in there at night and realized initially it was a no-no and completely unsafe, because what happened was the people in the forest, the people in the bush, the people in the jungle, the people in the water, the people in the trees, all suddenly we became aware that they were there, where they had been all day silently, and you just had a presence. You walk up to an area and it's just like, whoa, something's going on right here, and you feel it right there. As soon as the sun goes down, cracking and popping and coming through, and you're like, oh. Melanie and I were in a state of, I would say we were disassociated from our bodies. Like, we were so afraid of everything that came alive in 30 seconds from every direction, and they were all sitting in there, and we had been in there for 2 hours examining this structure, and they were all everywhere. Suddenly, these steamroller sounds come through like, it was like slow steps, and every time this thing stepped, shit was breaking under its track. You know what I mean? It was like, and you were hearing it plainly. I mean, it was like terrifying. And here, it's like that magic where there's like barely a little bit of daylight left. And we managed to get up on that levee out of that bush, and we were cooking. And there was dudes cooking next to us in the bush on the way out. And I was frightened. I'll just be honest with you. I was frightened, because I had thoughts of 100 different kind of scenarios going on, right? And the first one was, if this is human beings, they have picked the wrong individual. And I was in no mood at that point. You know what I mean? So I wanted to make sure it wasn't a couple of dudes. So I went in after them. Straight up. On camera. And I cut a lot of stuff out for fear of judgment from the public for what I said and what I did when I went down in those bushes. But the Sasquatch rewarded me with a tree branch across my chest, and I had a bruise on an angle all the way up my chest, man. Well, it was like, 3 good spots in a line anyway. And knocked the camera out of my hand, knocked me back on my behind. And I was outside of my body. I was so afraid, standing in there. It was pitch black. All of a sudden, man, I just could feel this branch coming. And I like caught it. As I looked up, I could see the arc in this big ass branch coming. And it came from like, out over here. It was in front of me, but like at my 2 o'clock. It was like at my 2 o'clock. It came out of the saw palmetto head, which was 12 feet high. So it was flying, 15 feet in the air probably, just 6 foot branch. Might have been a little bit longer, man, because when it hit me, and this is the cool part. The cool part is it was a dry, rotted, dead branch. So, first of all, okay, it had already been on the ground. This isn't something, this thing was like, had been waterlogged and everything, man, because it smashed across my chest. I mean, it was pretty thick. It was, it was about that thick, I'd say. It's like a log, kind of. It probably would have put me in the hospital if it was fresh, but it wasn't. And that was one of the signs that I got hit by something that was picked up off the ground. So, and in the encounters that you have, like, this is something I just want to say to people who are researching, right? If you're watching, it's one of these things, like in the encounter you have, that information that I just told you, that's stuff you can glean from the encounter, and you need to. And like examining that, like, oh, I was hit. It was it was a piece of deadfall. Understand, that's what we call that stuff. It's deadfall, right? But the suffix is fall, fallen, have fell. You know what I mean? So like, how did it get up off the ground? It didn't fall out of a tree, is my point. And so, when you confirm and all this stuff, you start realizing. And really, to be honest with you, the tree branch wasn't what convinced me. Because I'll get up and go fight. It doesn't bother me one bit. Been brawling my whole life. You know what I mean? And in the end, man, it is what it is, And I always believed it to be a necessary aspect of life, because that's the kind of neighborhoods I grew up in. But it turns out that's, it's like, I hate to go all cry macho on you and shit, but in the end, man, it's like peace is much better. So, you know what I mean? But it wasn't that scared me. What scared me was who walked off and where they walked off from. Because there were 4 positions. Where the log came from walked off first. And then it got over, maybe right over here, and then a dude right in line with him took off with him. And then another guy joined him, and then a head bobbed across the moonlight opening. Pointy little triangle head, man. And I saw it all. And they were big. They were way bigger than me. And it was then that I realized, while I was standing there, that I just had confronted a group of Sasquatch that were paralleling our position on the way out, after we examined a structure they built, in which the second the sun got to where it was like, okay, it's like pretty much dark, they started coming out of trees and everywhere, moving towards the structure, almost as if saying, leave, you're in our stuff, like in a very aggressive manner is the way I would put it. So that in and of itself was the most, at that point, was the most terrifying thing that I'd ever been through. To the degree that I literally blacked out being hit by a branch. I had no recollection of it. And it was only the fact that the cameras were rolling from 2 different positions to confirm that I was indeed hit by a branch. But that's how I was almost, use profanity, man. I was terrified to the extent that I was blacking out. The anxiety that I felt as those individuals walked off was blood chilling. It was bone chilling. It was like, and seeing the head go across, and I was just like, I backed up, and what was interesting was there was one behind me, and my wife said, "There's one over here." She was back up on the levee, and I had gone down in there after these homeless people. I thought I was going to bust somebody up, man. You gonna try to scare me and my wife like that? I'm coming after you. You're in the woods, man. Don't do that shit to me. And so I was coming after whoever it was, and then it just happened to be that, yeah, it was homeless people, technically. They're just giant and covered in hair. Big ass omnivores. Yeah, and I'm talking about adept. Because from that moment, terrifying things happened to us every single time we went in that place for 3 months. 3 months, starting with the next morning. But we left and we went home and we looked at the footage from the GoPros. And I don't know what the fuck other cameras we had, but in the end we had a couple cameras and we had some memory cards and some other shit. So we were looking at it and we saw that there was an individual up by the edge of the levee, 10 feet from Melanie the whole time, standing there, a gray one, and you can see his whole head, his brows, the eyes, and all that. This is dark, man. And I'm cleaning the film up, and there's an individual standing there looking at my wife, and my wife said she was hearing something, like heavy crunching, and that's it. See, that's the 700 pounds when they are standing still and they lean forward on their foot, or they lean on the side of their foot if they happen to be on a stick. It sounds like a steamroller. Then they start moving, and it sounds like creeping steamroll heavy stuff, right? That's what they sound like when they're coming closer. Their hands, man, on their hands like that, and you're putting 300-400 pounds on one side of it, man. Are you kidding me? It sounds like a steamroller. Carrie Arnold attested to this, man, and many other people who have been with us will attest to that. It's frightening. We looked at that footage and decided to go back at 4:30 in the morning to the exact same spot. So we went to bed about midnight. 4.5 hours later, we got up, we drove back. We got there about 5:15. We walked down the road, took a left, went in the bushes, and we're in the wrong spot. I was like, turn around, go back up. I missed the spot twice. Third time's a charm, I said. Melanie was frustrated. I was fucking frustrated. We walked down the third time, a little further down, and I was like, oh, this is it. There was a big tree here, and this is the tree. That's right. I was so traumatized the night before, I couldn't even remember where the incident happened. And it's only 40 yards, like, stretch before you get to the truck. You know what I mean? It's like, anyway, we went down in there, right where it was, throwing shit at me. And it got so thick that I couldn't get through it. Melanie was behind me. I was like, just turn around, man. This sucks. And it sounded like we were in a hot tin roof factory banging all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. Get out of here, man. It's 5:30 in the morning. I'm jumping through these bushes. I'm like, come on. So we go to leave. And on my left is this log pile that's about 48 inches high, and there's about 6 trees in it. Never thought to look why. Why were those trees all piled up like that? That shit doesn't happen naturally. Unless there's a mudslide or an ice storm or, something that can justify it. But arbitrary, tree stacking, I mean, like, come on, man. We were standing right there, and I was in a state of shock because a man that sounded 5 times bigger than I was laying on the ground right there. He went, like, it was like, oh, I almost said, excuse me, sir. And then he started growling at us. Like like a Tyrannosaurus or some shit. It was insane. 4 feet away on the ground. So Melanie was confused, I think. And then my reactions were very heightened because I understood what was going on immediately. And we were about to be harmed. You know, it was right there. And there's no amount of, it's like, you don't, it was right then, when this thing was right there, that I realized it sunk in, the reality of Sasquatch. I sometimes think that after that moment was really when everything changed, you know. First of all, Melanie was beside herself, right? So this thing's growling at us, and what was very obvious to me, first of all, was the cognition that there was a choice made to alter the sound and sounds that he was making. He was very clearly frustrated. we like literally were walking all down in there in 3 different spots. I mean, this was the 3rd time we went down that levee, getting closer to him. He still stayed there. That's the part that, of the whole situation, that's the part that is the most telling about the species. And it was foretelling, is the way I'll put it. He didn't move. He heard us coming clearly from 50 it was like we went down that levee 30 yards from him, and then 20 yards from him, and then right on his ass. And he was still there. All through these palmettos, banging and making. Listen, man, there is absolutely no way the creature did not know we were coming. Plus, we were talking the whole time. This is 2 beginners with no understanding of what's in the bushes and what's about to happen, right? We're just like 2 klutzes walking around at 5:30 in the morning, pitch black, with a spotlight and a GoPro. And the GoPro was rolling, and the spotlight was in my hand, and I was so freaked out about trying to get out of there. I didn't even think. It was like, I don't need to stop here and shoot footage. What I need to do is get my wife out of here. And there was a guttural sense of, we're going to die, like, while this thing was growling at us. But the whole, oh, this is exactly what the individual did, man. He was like, oh, and then he went, third one got really, really powerful and started getting louder and louder and louder from 4 feet away on the ground in pitch black behind these logs. And I realized I'm going to die. And like Melanie was just like, and I'm going, go! And she's just standing there, dude. Anyway, I had to physically remove her from the situation. You know, if you've ever been in a situation like that, then, you know, you understand the sense of and the need to leave that exact area is like physical, right? So, for me, my wife reacted like prey. And the low frequencies coming from the creature paralyzed her. Like a deer. Little Melanie was paralyzed like a deer. So I had to remove her. And I basically shoved her, and she went flying up the hill. And then like landed on her feet and kept going. Because the creature was heightening the intensity of, I'm going to kill you with these growls. And it was just like, you know, I mean, it was like, there's nowhere to go. Go towards the creature. There's a wall of bushes. there's a wall of bushes behind you, or there's your wife and she's like standing there going, well, this thing's like gonna kill you. So in hindsight, the whole thing was, it was probably only a total of 10 seconds. But it was a very long 5 seconds of those growlings getting, you know what I mean? Like, so we made it out of there and went 60 yards down the levee, deeper in immediately after that, and took a left and went in, and I went in those bushes and tried to find that creature.